I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people just like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Today's guest, I actually met 10 years ago when I was speaking at a conference in Ohio. Her name is Sid Nodder, and I never forgot her. Truth is, now she actually has a wonderful book out. It's called The Plan A Diet. The foreword is by Dr. Hans Deal, who we've had on the show several times, who actually wrote the foreword to my first book. And she's going to be making some amazing and delicious recipes today, including a home-style squash and beans, a tasty tater soup, and an orange dreamsicle to light. Please welcome the lady who I never forgot, Sid Nodder. It's so good to see you, Sid.
Thank you, Chef AJ. Wonderful to be here.
So you wrote a book since I saw you. You're all grown up now.
Yeah, I did. It's called Plan A Diet, combining whole food, plant-based nutrition with the timeless wisdom of scripture. And what it is it's not your typical diet of restriction or calorie counting or deprivation, and there's no magical pills or supplements or powders. It's simply a whole food, plant-based, no added oil diet based around starches and foods that are calorie dilute and high in fiber and nutrition, but low in fat and low in calorie density.
Well, that's my favorite topic, calorie density, because I love that way of eating. You get to eat more, weigh less, and then have the highest nutrient food at the same time.
Right. And starches are the key, right, for satiety. And also, I have included on the bottom of my little food pyramid here, I have good clean water on the bottom of the food pyramid because I think that's something that's often overlooked in a diet plan is the need for good clean water every day. It's estimated that 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated and that kids arrive at school in a state of dehydration also too. So I thought it was important to just put a reminder in there that we do need to drink a lot of water every day.
Good advice.
In fact, one of my relatives last year, they found her on the bathroom floor, disoriented and weak, and rushed her to the hospital. And after all the tests, it was just determined that she was dehydrated. So not having enough water can really make us feel tired. A lot of times people say they don't have energy. It might just be that they're not getting enough water. It can make you dizzy. It can make you nauseous. So there's lots of reasons to drink good water every day. But what makes this book different from a lot of other diet plans is that, well, not only is it based on science, it's very heavily referenced, but the research behind why we should eat this way, but it also includes biblical support and scripture for those who happen to be of faith, so it includes that component too. And I've been teaching and coaching people for over 25 years now, Chef AJ, so I've seen a lot of things, which I'm going to share a little bit with you today as we go along. But that's what makes the book a little different. And as you said, Dr. Deal wrote the foreword to the book, Dr. Hans Deal, and Dr. Anthony Lim, who's also one of your guests, endorsed the book. So, and I'm also very pleased to announce that the book just won a 2020 Book Excellence Award. So I'm really humbled and grateful for that.
That's congratulations.
Thank you. So in my travels, people tell me they want very simple, easy recipes. And that's why the recipes I chose today are super simple. Tasty tater soup, home-style beans and squash, and an orange dreamsicle delight, which is a smoothie. So those are very simple things that you can make every day. Of course, smoothies, let me go back to my food pyramid here, are at the top of the food pyramid. So at the bottom, we have the water, and then we have our starches like our potatoes, sweet potatoes, beans, corn, rice, legumes, whole grains, squash, and root vegetables. Then above that, we have our other non-starchy vegetables and our greens. Above that, we have our fruit. Then approved minimally processed foods. There are some soups and crackers and pastas we can have, assuming they meet the label reading requirements that are spelled out in the book. Then at the top is the higher fat plant foods, unless you're trying to lose weight quickly or reverse a disease, then those are not recommended. And at the very top are the healthy treats. And that's what dessert smoothies are the top of the food pyramid, right? So these aren't the daily fare. When we get to the smoothie, I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Why did you call the book The Plan A Diet?
Couple of reasons. Well, when we say something is our plan A, that usually means it's our first and most beneficial choice, right? That's our plan A. So number one, this was God's plan A diet. You know, I've included scripture in the book. What was the first diet prescribed to man was every tree that bears fruit and every seed bearing plant, you know, he said that will be your food. But for other reasons too, plan A should be our first choice for disease prevention, right? This is the only diet that I know of that can prevent disease. I mean, I think of my own family history, which is dire, you know, heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes. I just got my Medicare card this week in the mail, and I'm still very healthy. I'm sure it's because of the way we eat. Then it's disease reversal, right? This is the only diet that can reverse heart disease. Think of that. I mean, our number one killer can be reversed eating this way, not to mention all the other things that we suffer. Another reason is it's not a fad diet, right? This is a long-term pattern of eating that should be embraced for a lifetime if you want to have a long, enjoyable life. And another reason is for ethical reasons, you know, which should be our choice for that too, not the environment, not only the environment, you know, but animal concerns and all of that. And the last reason is that this is as I mentioned, it's the only diet that can reverse disease. I've already said that. So it should be our plan A for many, many reasons. And those are just a few.
Yeah. Well, Caroline, who's watching live, says, I loved her book. I recommend it to people all the time. It's so frustrating how friends from church and my Bible study group just don't connect the dots between faith and eating healthy, treating the body as a temple and treating animals with kindness and grace. We talk about that a lot. So.
Yeah, that's true. That was another reason for me writing the book, just seeing I'm surrounded by people all the time that just don't know any better, and they're suffering needlessly. They're suffering diet-related illnesses, and they don't even realize the impact that their diet has on their health.
Well, everybody's commenting on your shirt. I know where they can get one.
Dr. McDougall, right?
Yep. I love that shirt. I have it too. So does Linda Middlesworth, who's watching. So she actually got it for me.
Yeah.
When did you first become plant-based? I don't really think I know your story.
About 32 years ago, became plant-based, but was doing it all wrong. I was a really unhealthy vegetarian for many years. You know, I was still eating dairy and eggs. Then I switched to an unhealthy vegan diet after that. I thought, okay, I'm going to eat Morningstar chick patties and all these other things. So I was eating a lot of processed vegan food that was not all that healthy. And then in 2008, I went whole food plant-based and finally gave up the last of the dairy. So since 2008, 12 years now, I've been whole food plant-based, but it was a journey for me. I had high cholesterol, my bone health was deteriorating, I had constant colds, all of which cleared up, you know, when I switched to this way of eating.
That's great. Would you like to, what recipe are you going to do first?
First, I'm going to do the tasty tater soup. And this is an Instant Pot recipe. Although you probably could make this on the stove. I just have never done that, but you could. I'm going to turn my saute feature on in the Instant Pot. And I'm going to throw in 1 diced onion. And, oops, talking to me. Okay, and then 2 cloves of garlic and a little water. And I wish you could see inside the Instant Pot right now. If you don't have a saute, you probably do have a saute feature. I'm assuming every Instant Pot has a saute feature. What do you think? But it's just like sauteing in a skillet. Of course, we're not using any oil or anything. We're just adding a little water to prevent sticking. And as this heats up and the vegetables get a little softer, then I'm going to add in my spices. And those spices are going to be, by the way, these recipes are on my website, sydnotter.com. But when you go to the recipe tab, don't click on it. You have to hover over it, and then you'll see Chef AJ's cooking demo recipes. Okay, so hover over the word recipes, and you'll see these particular 3 recipes. So the spices are going to be garlic powder, basil, parsley, onion powder, and Benson's Table Tasty, and all of the amounts are specified on those recipes that you have there. So when this softens up a little bit, I'll show you what we're going to do next. But as we go along, I'd like to talk about a couple little things that are in the book, you know, as we're waiting for things to heat up here. The first thing, I do have a chapter in there called Be a Nonconformist. And did you know that scriptures tells us don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. So think about that with food. We live in a culture of the standard American diet where everything is supersized, deep fried, wrapped in extra bacon, or topped with cheese, right? So we do not want to fit into that culture at all. I think about my own diet growing up. You know, my parents owned a bar and a pizza kitchen. So as a child, my mom would make the dough, the sauce, and the sausage from scratch. I mean, this was a real Italian pizza kitchen with everything made from scratch. And she'd roll out a little pizza dough for me and let me make my own toppings. Of course, I would smother it with shredded mozzarella and the sausage and all of that. So after I would eat the pizza, I'd go behind my dad's bar. This was during the day, you know, before the patrons came in. And he had frosted mugs, you know, in the cooler, frosted big mugs for beer. And then he had a big vat of vanilla ice cream so he could make grasshoppers and brandy Alexanders and all these ice cream based drink. And then I would go to the tavern and have root beer, you know, so every day I'd make myself a big root beer float and behind my dad's bar, and then take some Snicker bars and gum on the way out. So my diet growing up was hot dogs and a lot of meat and salami, homemade salami and all these things. But my parents were avid gardeners as well. So they grew tomatoes and potatoes and peppers and melons. And so at least we had that going on for us. But I bring this up not to reflect negatively at all on my parents. They were very loving, caring people doing what they knew to do. But just an example that we fit into the culture of that time. This was the 50s and 60s when I was growing up. So we certainly did fit into the culture at that time. Now, we don't want to fit into today's culture because of the processed food and fast food has increased so much. And there's just the standard American diet, did you know, is the #1 cause of disability and early death. So we certainly don't want to conform to that. Okay, this is heating up a little bit. So I'm going to add in those spices that I talked about. Garlic powder, basil, parsley flakes, onion powder, and Benson's Tasty Table. Ooh, it already smells good. And then here's where we're going to add 4 cups of chopped Yukon Gold potatoes, 1 cup of frozen mixed veggies, and you can use whatever kind you want. You could use just corn or just peas. I buy these little organic bags of carrot, corn, and green beans and peas. So just a cup of mixed veggies, frozen. Very simple, right? We try to keep it very simple. A cup of water. And a cup of unsweetened plant milk. So today I'm going to use the Whole Foods unsweetened. Well, we don't want to use vanilla. Get back here to use the unsweetened almond. A cup of that. Hang on one second, okay. For 5 minutes. Let me give this a stir first. This is such a good recipe. It's very subjective. You can spice it up however you like. So I'm going to, in the meantime, also mix 1 cup of plant milk with 4 tablespoons of arrowroot or cornstarch. And that's going to be what makes this soup really thick. But we're not going to add this until the end of the recipe. So let me go ahead and whisk that up. And then I'm going to set this aside for now and come back to it in just a little bit. And we'll get on to the next recipe I'm going to make is a home-style squash and pinto beans. But before we do, let me mention back when we were talking about not conforming to the culture. In the book, I talk about today we live in the culture of COOFAD, COOFAD, which stands for chicken, olive oil, fish, and dairy. The foods that most people think are healthy, right? I've had so many clients say to me, you know, I'm eating pretty healthy. I've given up the red meat and now I'm just eating chicken, fish, low-fat dairy, and extra virgin olive oil. I'm like, no, you know, Those are not health foods. So that's what the culture though today, unfortunately, thinks is healthy. And do you know, I learned this from Dr. Greger's book, that a chicken today has 10 times more fat than a chicken 100 years ago because of the way they do the farming methods now. They manipulate that bird with a lot of extra fat to make it plump. So back in the day, a century ago, a chicken had 2 grams of fat, and today it has 23 grams of fat. And chicken today has 2 to 3 times more fat than protein. So, you know, the chickens are being manipulated. They're not healthy at any stretch of the mean. They're high in cholesterol and are 50% fat, you know, compared to beef, which is 57% fat. So if a lot of people think chicken is low fat, it really is not. So we talk about that in the book, the culture of coup fad and why we don't want to conform to that. Let me grab my skillet real quick.
So Sid, I have a couple of questions. One from Stephanie. What did you mean by clean water? And Lori wants to know if the soup you're making comes out like a chowder.
It does. First of all, about the soup, yeah, it does come out thick like a stew. But if you want it thinner, you can add more plant milk to it. And the good clean water part is really filtered water that has, you know, a lot of the impurities filtered out. We have a whole house filter on our sink here, you know, on our house. So if you see me getting water from the sink, that is being filtered in our basement. We have a filtering system, but that's what I meant by good clean water, you know, just to remove a lot of the impurities as much as we can. Is that right? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. This is a large skillet, and I certainly would not use this to make this recipe typically, but I don't want to go to the stove. I want you to see what I'm doing. So this is a 16-inch electric skillet that I have. And now we're moving on to the home style squash and pinto beans. And with summer squash, if you've got squash in your garden, this is a great recipe. Okay, I'm going to turn this up to about 300. And grab all of my ingredients here for this, if you don't mind. The other thing about the culture of coup fad, you know, the olive oil in there, we all know why we shouldn't eat oil, right? Or many of us do know that. 120 calories and 14 grams of fat per tablespoon. Very damaging to our artery lining, which paves the way for plaque formation. It's one of the most inflammatory foods out there. In fact, I do a whole class at the local college called Inflammation in Your Diet. That class, you can find it on my website under courses if you're interested in that. But oils are one of the most highly inflammatory foods that you can eat. And the other foods include sugar, refined grains, all of that's explained in the class if you're interested.
Well, you teach your classes at the college, or
Yeah.
you also teach online?
Yeah, I do. I have online courses, and I teach through Zoom right now at the college, Intro to Safe, Healthy Weight Loss, and then the inflammation class. It's a very popular one. Because sadly, most Americans are suffering with some type of inflammatory issue. Well, inflammation is really associated with most every disease that we have when you look at the diseases that are associated with it. Okay, let me get my brain back on the recipes. So I have just added a 1/4 cup of vegetable broth to this skillet. I don't know, hopefully you can kind of see it. I'm going to throw in a 1/2 cup of onion and 2 cloves of garlic. And 2 teaspoons of chopped jalapeno. If you want more heat, you know, you could add more jalapeno. I know my husband likes things a lot hotter than I do. And we're going to just saute that for 2 minutes. And I've got this pan way too hot, so I'm going to turn it down a little bit. We're going to be traveling soon, and I'm going to take this with me as well as my Instant Pot, because we'll be in the car. We won't be flying. And I don't know, what do you like to do when you travel, Chef AJ? You bring out your Instant Pot with you, don't you?
Absolutely. I haven't traveled since last November, but yes, I always brought the 3-quart, the little one with me because it was easier. Fits right under the seat on the airplane.
So after we get that sauteed, here I have 1 cup of yellow squash diced and 1 cup of zucchini squash diced. That goes in next. And then we're going to add 1 can of rinsed and drained pinto beans and a 1/2 cup of corn. This is organic frozen corn. We're going to stir in 1 can of diced tomatoes with the liquid. And then I'm going to cover this and let it simmer for a little bit. That's basically it. Oh, except for the most important recipe, which is thyme, fresh thyme sprigs. Now the recipe calls for 3 sprigs of thyme, but I don't do that. I put in a lot more. I put in like a bunch like this, because who doesn't want more thyme, right? I like to have lots more thyme. And you're going to pick it out at the end anyway. So it's just a great flavoring. Sometimes I leave it in there and I'll even chew on it or eat it myself, but this is what really gives it the flavor. So I'm going to cover this up and let it simmer for 10 minutes. Got a lot of stuff going on here. Let me check the Instant Pot and see where we are. It's still coming up to pressure. Make sure it's not going to vent. Okay, we're set there. So let me talk about another thing that's in the book, which is the principle of reaping and sowing. Many of you may know that, scripture says that a man is going to reap what he sows. Okay, well, what does that mean? It just means, that we're going to harvest whatever it is that we plant. And people in biblical times would have been very understanding of this principle because they were avid gardeners who were very well versed in raising crops. So when we think about our life today, we're going to reap what we sow. In other words, if we plant cucumber seeds, we can expect to reap cucumbers, right? And if we plant strawberry seeds, we can expect to reap strawberries. Well, the same principle applies to the choices in our life, which are the seeds that we plant in our life. So every day we're making choices in all areas of our lives. And those are the seeds that are going to result in a corresponding harvest at some point. So never has a principle been more true than when it comes to food and diet. So if we sow the standard American diet, we're going to reap weight problems and bad health. I like how Dr. Greger says it. He said that, it just went right out of my brain. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But if we sow a healthy diet, we can expect to reap the lowest risk of disease, an optimal weight and all of that. So this principle of reaping and sowing very much applies to our diet. And in the book, I talk about sowing the seeds of moderation, because haven't you heard, well, we eat everything in moderation as if that's supposed to be healthy in some way. But no, sowing the seeds of moderation is not a good idea for a couple of reasons. One is that the definition is so vague. If you ask 10 people in the room what that means, no 2 are going to have the same definition. Does it mean you can eat, have 1 can of pop a week or 1 can of pop a day? Does the moderation apply to the quantity of the food or the quality of the food? Does it mean you can have French fried onion rings 1 night a week or just whenever you want, when you're at the drive-in? There's so many vague definitions to it. Plus, when we eat in moderation, the clear-cut line of what we should eat becomes very blurred. So in the book, I talk about, what if somebody says, well, I'm just going to have bacon and eggs on Sunday morning and a donut at the work office meeting on Tuesday, and ice cream after the kids' baseball game just once a week there, and then a cheese pepperoni pizza just on Friday night. Well, pretty soon, within that week's time, they've eaten a whole bunch of really unhealthy food, all because they think they're eating in moderation. So it's just a slippery slope. Even in Dr. Esselstyn's book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, he has a whole chapter called Moderation Kills. And he talks about studies that show these big meta-analyses that when people with heart disease just moderately reduce their fat intake, they get a little better, but that disease continues to progress and will eventually take its toll. So we don't want to be moderately eating healthy. You know, sometimes it's not all or nothing, but it's the total pattern of the diet that matters the most. And when you start to include a lot of foods moderately, you know, unhealthy foods, then you're on a slippery slope, in my opinion. It keeps your addictions alive and kicking, and it just blurs that clear-cut line of what we should be eating.
Well, Deborah, who's watching live, says moderation leads to excess, in my opinion. I always tell people, if moderation ain't working for you, have you considered abstinence? Always works.
Mm-hmm. So that's going on. And also in the book, I talk about the big disconnects between diet and disease. Hang on, let me check this. Oh, 3 minutes left on the soup. And then we'll get into the smoothie here. The big disconnects between diet and disease. This is what I've noticed over the years with my clients. There's a disconnect. They don't understand the cause and effect of food. I mean, if sometimes we know the cause of food, of an effect of food, say you have allergies or you have acid reflux or heartburn, or you get a headache when you eat certain things, then immediately you know what you ate that caused that problem. But for the most part, there's a big time gap between eating a poor diet and then having, bad health. So people don't put those two things together typically. It'd be something else if, you ate a big donut and your joints started hurting immediately, or you ate a bacon cheeseburger and you had chest pain, then we might connect those dots better about the importance of our diet. Another one is that, disease X runs in my family, so I'm pre-programmed for disease. There's nothing, diet's not going to matter. Totally untrue. We know that you can be genetically predisposed for something and not have that disease expressed, right? There's a difference between genetic predisposition and genetic expression. Diet and lifestyle are the biggest determinants of whether those genes express, right? So that's a big disconnect with people. They often think that they're pre-programmed, the genetic cards have been dealt and there's nothing they can do about it. Not true. Another big disconnect is, well, I'm on meds, so I no longer have a problem. You'd be shocked at how many people I see that believe they're in excellent health, even though they're on several medications for preventable illness. It gives them a false sense of security. They think that the problem has been taken care of, but it has not. The chronic condition is still there. And will continue to progress unless the root cause is addressed, which is the food, right? It's the food. So those are the few of the big disconnects I see. Another one is they make small changes, but they expect big results. So they'll think, oh, I'm going to add a few blueberries to my cheesecake. No, it's not just about adding a few superfoods to your diet. I see that happen a lot. Or they'll add flaxseed to a dairy-based smoothie, or something. But as I mentioned earlier, it's the totality of the diet that matters the most. So I talk about those big disconnects in the book. Oh, hang on. I think the Instant Pot is talking.
It's great that you're able to multitask, cook and talk at the same time. So there is a question from Susie. She doesn't have an Instant Pot. Could she make the soup in a crock pot or any of the recipes in the crock pot?
I've never tried it. I have personally never tried that, but I don't see why not. As long as the potatoes cook, that's really the main goal, is to get the potatoes tender, because everything else in there, you've already sauteed your veggies at the start, and the frozen veggies, the frozen, corn mixed vegetable mixture, that doesn't really need to cook except to warm up. So as long as the potatoes are cooking, I think you might have to add more liquid than I just did for the Instant Pot. I put a cup of water in there and a cup of plant milk. Not sure if that would be enough on the stove. You might have to add more liquid to cover the potatoes just to get them cooked. Does that make sense?
Yep, but it will take a lot longer in a crock pot than it will in an Instant Pot.
Yeah, well, definitely. All right. So should I make the dreamsicle while we're still waiting, or what?
Sure. That's what everybody's waiting for, is the dessert.
Hey, Hey, on my website, I have a free PDF called 10 Simple Dessert Smoothies. And that's a class I offer locally. Everybody wants to know how to make dessert smoothies, right?
You bet.
You can get a free copy of that on my website.
Which is just your name, sydnodder.com, and I'll keep posting the link.
Because I'm at my island today, I have all this extension cord magic going on here. All right, now this is so easy, it's almost embarrassing to call it a recipe. It's a peeled orange. You know, I've got a Minneola. Do you know Minneolas? Do you know what those are? It's like an orange.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. It's got this little bell shape on top. And they just look so good in the store. I thought I was going to use that today and try it out. So we've got an orange, a frozen mango that you either cut up yourself, but I don't. You know, I can buy organic frozen mango at Whole Foods for like $1 something. So I've got a cup of frozen mango here. Although I don't get to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's very often, it's an hour drive for me. So I have to depend on my local stores for things as well. One frozen banana. Oh, by the way, these frozen blueberries are awesome. I get these at Walmart. You know, if you like blueberries, this is a really good way to get your berries in. So one frozen banana goes in. Some of the other smoothies on that free handout are, let me tell you what they are, so your mouth will water and you'll want to have it. Your peach is one. The Elvis impersonator, so you know that's got a little peanut butter in it or maybe defatted peanut powder, a banana split smoothie, Popeye's secret weapon, easy chocolate caramel shake, chocolate blueberry smoothie, a shameless shamrock shake. So for, you know, when March comes around, you can make that one. And there's one called watermelon surprise and even a green tea smoothie. So try some of those.
They sound fantastic. And all they have to do is go to your website to get them.
Right. I also have a free course called 3 Reasons Dieters Regain the Weight. And that's a free course too. That's also on my website under the courses tab. All right, so I've got a frozen banana, a frozen mango, 1 orange, and plant milk. It calls for like a half cup to a cup. This you can also tweak so many ways. You're going to taste it when it's done just to see if you want to add more banana or if you want it thinner, you would just add more milk. Oops, got to get my plunger out. I just wish I could fast forward and not have you have to wait through all that.
Amber's saying plain or vanilla plant milk. Probably just your preference, right? Whatever you have.
I use plain, but you could use vanilla. I've got to taste it. You know, never take something out of the blender without tasting it, right? Because you're going to want to tweak it maybe. And maybe it needs more orangey. That's going to work. That will work. Although it could be blended just a little bit more. I'm so sorry. I have to listen to the blender a little bit longer.
That's okay. She doesn't know that we don't have to listen to the blender too much.
A little straw.
That looks like the perfect summer treat.
Yeah. Yes, yes. And how easy is that? Remember orange dreamsicles as a child? It was like on a stick, frozen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was a big fan of push-ups. Remember that? It was orange sherbet and you'd push it up through the tube. Oh my gosh. That and drumsticks. We always had those in the house. Back when we fit into the culture of the day, remember? But that doesn't mean to say we cannot enjoy delicious fruit-based ice cream. Oh my gosh, have you tried the Yonana? Have you made, Yonana ice cream? Or there's so many concoctions we make. We are not deprived of those creamy, sweet treats, that's for sure. Okay, this is coming along well here. I think this is done. So let's go back to this squash and pinto bean recipe. I can smell the thyme. I just love that. If you've got a garden with squash and thyme, you're in business. So it's served over rice, brown rice. The recipe says 2 cups of brown rice, but whatever, however much rice you want. And then you just serve this up over top of the rice. Now you can pick out the thyme. It says to just pick it out and discard it. A lot of times I leave it in, like I said, and I'll just munch on it. So this was so simple, really. All we did was chop up some zucchini and yellow squash and an onion, basically. It just is very easy and flavorful. So that's what it looks like completed. Oops, I see steam coming off. You see steam coming?
That looks delicious.
Yeah, it's very good. Okay. And let me get this out of the way.
Do you have an air fryer, Sid?
I don't. Are you asking that, Chef AJ, or someone else?
No, I'm asking that just because it's next to the Instant Pot. It's my second favorite appliance.
Is it? Okay, it's on my list. It's on my radar. What brand do you recommend?
Well, the best you can afford and the biggest, which would be the Breville, because then you can make a lot of stuff in it. But it's really a lot of fun. If you're uncertain, if you're going to like air frying, you can get a crisp lid for the top, just for like $50 or so, just to see if you like it. But I haven't met anybody that really didn't like food from an air fryer.
Yeah, I've got to do that. Okay, so let me check on the soup and tell you about something else about the book. So over the years, I've discovered what I call 12 barriers to change. Things that prevent people from making the change, or things that prevent them from sticking to a change once they make the decision. So, of course, one of the biggest barriers is physical food addiction, right? We know that. And I'll share my little addiction story. A few years ago, I was addicted to mocha lattes. And, mocha lattes. I was ordering decaf coffee with plant milk and only half the chocolate that is recommended for those drinks. So I thought I was doing pretty good, right? Decaf, plant milk, half the chocolate. This was a few years ago. But I was drinking that so often that was enough sugar and chocolate to get me hooked on those drinks. I was really planning my whole routine. If I was gonna run errands, I would plan my routine about when was the best time to be at the window to get that drink, planning out my day around when I was gonna get a mocha latte. That's pretty sad, but that's what it was. And then if I was traveling with my hubby, I'd make him, we're on the highway, I'd ask him to go miles down the road, miles off the highway, just so I could get one of those drinks. So anyway, when I was working on my book, there's a chapter in there called Hooked on Sweets, Treats, and Other Cheats. And it's about, food addiction. I realized that I had become addicted to that. And scripture says that whatever a person gives into soon becomes his master. So mocha lattes were basically my master. I had allowed that to become my master, and I didn't even realize it until I started working on my book about this stuff. And I thought, yeah, this is not correct. So I had to take measures to address that. So that is one of the biggest barriers. And another one is emotional eating. I'm a big stress eater. I don't know about you guys, but if stress is going on, my head's in the refrigerator. Or if I'm trying to delay something I don't want to deal with, sometimes I'll have to learn software programs for different things that I'm doing online. And I don't really want to do that, but I have to do it. So instead of doing it, my head's in the refrigerator because I'm trying to delay a problem, or something I don't want to do. So food addiction, emotional eating, those are two of the biggest barriers. And then fear of change. I mean, a lot of people, they're just afraid that they might fail again, or they're afraid that the unknowns, when you change your diet, there's a lot of unknowns, especially when you go from the standard American diet to whole food plant-based. I mean, that's just worlds apart. So the fear of change is, disrupts the deep-rooted perceptions of things, and a lot of people won't make the change because of that. Another one is the avoidance of pain, like people that aren't willing to endure a short-term period of discomfort to get to the long-term gain. And it's not really physical discomfort, but yeah, you're going to have to learn new recipes and learn to cook without oil, and learn to shop differently, learn to eat out differently. And for people that view that as a bunch of negatives, to be shunned, negatives to be shunned, they will not make the change in order to get that long-term benefit result. So avoidance of pain is a big one. And then habit is one too. I mean, habits are good, right? Habits can be good or bad. There's nothing wrong with being a creature of habit as long as we're eating or we're making habits that are good, replacing the bad habits with good ones. But when we're so dependent on a habit that we can't make a change, then that can be a barrier to change. Anyway, I'm talking your ear off when you're probably wanting to say, get to the soup, right?
No, is that an 8-quart or a 6-quart Instant Pot?
It's a 10, I believe. It was a Christmas gift. I think it's 10. It's not 6.
Wow. That's big. That's great.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and release the pressure on this. Ooh, it smells good. This is another thing that you can tweak to your liking with the spices that you like. And if it's too thick for you, then you could add more plant milk to it. Another thing on my website that's free is the 21-day meal plan. It's a chapter that I wrote for the book, but because the book was getting too lengthy, they asked me to cut it down to a 7-day meal plan, so I did. But the whole 21-day meal plan is on the website.
Type it in again.
The diet tab, I believe. Okay, so another thing I talk about in the book is 7 tips to evaluate what you hear and read, because aren't we bombarded by conflicting information like every day? All these high fat, high protein, low carb diets, they're horrible. Yet, they say they've got the science behind it. So how do you know what to believe when you keep hearing all these conflicting things? So in my chapter called How to Manage a Temple, there are 7 tips to evaluate everything you hear and read. The first one is to assume it's false until you look into it. Right. Another one is to always know the source of the funding, right? You're going to look at studies that are independently funded. I mean, we don't want to hear about how good eggs are from the egg industry, right? We want to get our information from independent sources. Okay, here's where I'm going to stir in that thickening agent. This was a cup of plant milk with 4 tablespoons of arrowroot or cornstarch. You stir that in, whisk it up. And this is what really makes it nice and creamy. Okay, while this is thickening up, I'll let you know a little bit about those 7 tips for evaluating what you hear and read. I know it's a lot. You have to actually look at the study of what is being promoted. I've got a whole file folder called sensationalized headlines that are just crazy headlines that mislead people. One was that, plant-based diets are not shown to be any better than blah, blah. And what they were considering a plant-based diet? 1 sweet potato a day. So just things like that, by reading that headline, you would think, oh my gosh, really? Plant-based diets aren't very good? No, you have to look at the studies and see what they're talking about. And a lot of times, there's drug manufacturers, supplement makers, a lot of times they will use their own research. The dairy industry is a prime example. All right, this is already getting thick. It smells so good too. Another thing about the studies too is, was it absolute terms or relative terms that they're reporting? And here's an example. I wrote this down so that I wouldn't, it's kind of hard to explain. So say there's a placebo and a real drug. So on the placebo, 2 out of 10 lowered the risk of heart attack. That's 2%, right? But on the relative, or on the drug group, 1% lowered their risk. So wouldn't that be a 1% different, right? 2%? That would be at absolute terms. But when they report it in relative terms, or when they report it in absolute terms, yeah, the difference is 1%. But in relative terms, 1% divided by 2% is 50%. So they can say this drug lowers the risk of heart disease by 50%, when really it's 1%. So I know that's confusing. It's all explained in the book. But that's just one way you need to be cautious of, the things that we hear and read. All right, I'm going to spoon this out now so you can see it. Again, if this is too thick for you, you could always add more plant milk to it.
Now we like our soups thick, though. That's the best.
So there it is. Can you see that?
Keep talking because it's showing.
What is? Is it showing up? Okay. So that is tasty tater soup.
That's beautiful. What does a day of eating look like for you, Sid?
Well, breakfast varies. I do like steel cut oats with those blueberries and flaxseed and cinnamon. Sometimes though we make pancakes. If it's on the weekend, we make whole wheat fluffy pancakes. Other times I'll make a Roadhouse hash, out of tofu. It's like a scramble. We'll have that. Sometimes I'll have leftovers from the night before. It just depends. There's no thing set in stone there. And then lunch and dinner are typically the same meal, like leftovers. We make a lot of, I try to do one Italian dish a week, one Mexican dish, maybe like a meatloaf, like a lentil meatloaf as well, like an American. So I try to vary that up every week in different ways. But I have a file folder that's about this thick, of my tried and trues. Believe me, we've been doing this for 32 years and a lot of recipes got flushed. So when you find your tried and trues that you like a lot, then you just keep those. And I always tell my clients, don't be overwhelmed. You don't need to go find, hundreds of recipes at once. Find 6 or 8 recipes that you like, and then you'll repeat, and then add in a recipe every week or 2, try a new thing. But I know it's a big feeling of overwhelm for a lot of people when they switch to this way of eating. It's just like, oh, where do I begin? Okay, right. Oatmeal for breakfast, minestrone soup for lunch, and some plant-based pasta or, lasagna or something for dinner, or stuffed peppers, stuffed peppers. You just keep it simple at first, and don't be thinking that you have to go be the galloping gourmet, with making all kinds of plant foods. So that's a good tip if you're just starting out.
Right. And I think that when people are not eating this way, it's not like they're eating 30 different breakfasts a month and 30 different lunches and 30 different dinners. They are finding, 6 to 10 favorites and repeating them.
Right. Yep. So a thing about my book too, if you are interested in getting the book, it's on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, but I have them on my website signed if you want for $10 and I even pay the shipping. So that's a good deal that I've got going on.
Nice. Are you an avid exerciser? Well, you live near Chicago, so I'm guessing it's pretty cold in the winter to do things outside.
We go south. I go south a lot in the winter. But I remember Dr. Lim saying one time for exercise that, 180 minutes a week is a good target. And that just stuck in my brain. So I try to get 180 minutes a week. That's 45-minute sessions or 3 1-hour sessions a week. That should be at the goal, at least the minimum goal. So yeah, I do exercise, and some weeks are better than others. It's not like I'm always perfect with it. Sometimes life gets in the way.
What kind of exercise do you enjoy?
I do a variety of things. I do step aerobics. We've got a treadmill, we've got an elliptical, we've got weight machines, and we've got a bicycle down there. So we have our basement's kind of like a gym, except when we have a potluck, then we got to clear all that out and make it a potluck room. But we have potlucks maybe once a quarter, except right now we're not because of COVID. But we have about 25 to 30 people come to our potlucks once a quarter.
Okay. Flatlanders watching live lives near Chicago. How would someone find out about your potlucks when they happen again?
Oh, get on my, send me an email, sidnotter@sidnotter.com, and I will add you to the list.
And question if your book is also available as an ebook.
It's a Kindle. Yeah, on Amazon, you can get the Kindle version.
Nice. Is anybody in your family plant-based, or are you the lone wolf?
I'm sorry?
Is anybody else in your family plant-based, or are you the lone wolf?
My hubby is plant-based as well, and he travels a lot still. So every week I'm packing his food, in a suitcase or a cooler. This week he drove. So, but yeah, he's plant-based, but my other sibling is not, unfortunately. I've been trying to work on her for 20 years to get her to change. But no, it's just my husband and I, and we're both plant-based.
Well, that's great. Well, it's good that you have your husband, because it makes it so much easier. It's amazing how much you accomplished in such a short amount of time with 3 recipes and talking.
Well, it's that Italian gene. My hands are flying and I'm talking away. But I love to teach people, that's my heart, is to educate. Because if I hadn't stumbled on this 30 some years ago, who knows where I'd be at the VFW eating fish fries on Friday night. I would, so I'm just so grateful I stumbled upon the Wellness Forum. Is where I stumbled upon Dr. Pam Popper 32 years ago from a woman that was doing an information class about the Wellness Forum. I just happened to be there, and I thought, oh, this sounds like something fun to do with my girlfriends, 4 weeks, 1 night a week. Let's go and at the time I thought I was eating healthy. That's the thing. That's that big disconnect I was talking about. And from there, my eyes were just kind of, bam, opened. I'm like, wow, this rings true with me. This all rings true, everything I heard. And so it started my gradual thing. I wish I would have jumped in with both feet. People say, do I jump in with both feet or gradual transition? In fact, I've got a transition plan in the book. It's called the Plan B transition approach. But the people that make a big commitment up front actually have the higher success rate, right? So not saying all change in the right direction is not good. It is. Every change you make toward a healthy diet is good. But yeah, as long as you're still moving forward, you don't get stuck, it has to have an end date where you're going to be totally transitioned to whole food plant-based, or it's too easy to fall back into old habits.
Okay. Karen says that she has the signed version of your book and that you sent a sweet note. I have the signed version as well. And you don't have to answer this question, but Anita says, will Sid share her age? She looks great.
I'm going to be 65 shortly. This year I'll be 65. That's why I got my Medicare card in the mail. And, there's something about receiving your Medicare card in the mail that just makes you stop and reflect a little bit on your life. You think, whoa, I've reached the age where I'm qualifying for a government program. So, it just makes you take stock. And I'm just so glad that I did run across this way of eating 32 years ago. I'm convinced this is why we are in good health today, because we make the efforts. Right. And once you get over that learning curve, if you're new to this, let me encourage you. You will not regret it. You just got to keep going. Get over the learning hump of it. There's a learning curve. Yeah. I've got a transition course on my website under courses. If you want to do that, it's a 6-week transition course.
Yep. Jody says, what a truly wonderful woman. Thank you for introducing us, Chef AJ. Thank you for your dedication to sharing plant-based nutrition. Sid Notter, appreciate you both so much. Thank you so much for the kind comment. I'd like to introduce you guys to people that maybe you don't know, but that are still doing amazing things. Linda wants to know if there's a lot of vegans in your area.
Not very many. We live an hour south of Chicago in a rural town. So to get 25 at a potluck in our area is really, really good. When I
Nice.
go to Florida in the summer months and I speak there at many veg fests and things, that is a much more open area to what I'm promoting. And, so people invite me in to speak down there. There's chip groups, I talked to a couple of chip groups there and spoken at veg fests. But here this is the Midwest. It's not saying that there aren't people here that eat this way. There are, but it's meat and potato country mostly, and fast food restaurants on every corner. We're in a small town of maybe 6 or 7,000, so that's why I have to travel an hour just to get to a Whole Foods.
Wow.
So,
Darlene says, can you complete your 12 steps as to why people fail? You stopped at 6.
sure. The 12 barriers to change. Well, we've talked about food addiction and emotional eating and fear of change, right? Avoidance of pain. We talked about habit. Denial is another big one. And I don't even know how you'd recognize that if you're truly in denial, right? How would you even recognize that you're in denial? But that is when people refuse to acknowledge that there's a problem. They just refuse to acknowledge the impact that their diet is having on their health. So that's denial. Another one is pride. I've met people that believe they'll never get sick, like that they're above everyone else. For some reason, they're going to be unscathed by what they're doing. And by the way, no one's going to tell them what to eat, right? If you try to make suggestions to people about their diet and they get real defensive about that, or that could be a sign of pride or rebellion. I've even seen some rebellious people that will sabotage the efforts of other people, that are trying to eat healthy. Sad to say, but I have seen that happen. Another one is, let me get to that sheet. Oh, ignorance, blind ignorance, which is they've never heard the message of plant-based eating. Like I was living in blind ignorance many, many years ago. But in today's day and age, with all the information we're exposed to, it's hard to think that there's blind ignorance out there totally, but there certainly could be. The other one is willful ignorance, or what I call apathy. That's when someone's aware of what they're doing maybe not be the healthiest thing, but they just don't care. They don't care enough about it to make any changes. That's apathy. Another one is false perception of the diet itself. They think it's not healthy. They think it's going to be bland and boring and rabbit food and sticks and twigs, right? I've had that joke made to me many times. Oh, what are you eating? Tree bark? No, we're not eating tree bark. We're eating lasagna and stuffed peppers and burritos and delicious things. But there's that perception out there that plant-based means we're eating lettuce. Or the false perception could also be that they're healthier than they think they are, right? And I've read studies on this. It's really scary that Americans, each year, the gauge goes up for how they perceive themselves. Many people perceive themselves as healthy or not overweight when in fact they really are. Just the perception is changing. Another huge one is family and social pressure, right? And I've got on YouTube, one of my videos addresses this, family and social pressure. I hear this a lot, mostly from women. My husband would never go for this. My kids will never go for this. So what do you do in that case? There's lots of things you can do, but remember that you're in charge of you. This is about you, not necessarily your family. So if you decide to do this for your health, there's ways. I know a lot of couples that are divided diet-wise. One is eating plant-based and one is not. And they have figured out how to make it work. So there are things you can do. There are possibilities out there. Don't get discouraged by that. Once you make the choice for you, that's what to focus on. Another one is, if you're a Christian, there's spiritual attack. As Christians, we believe we do have an enemy out there that likes to prey on our weaknesses, and food temptation and poor health. Combine those together, that's one way he can get a toehold into our brains. And then he strives to get us to question everything, question our faith, question our ability to make changes. He strives to get us focused on our problems, self-focused, and question our own self-worth. So he can do all that if we let him. So, and his main goal is to get us to not serve God to our full ability. That's why he does all that. So that's the 12th one. But I also have a 13th barrier to change, which is the combo pack, right? Because all of these barriers we've talked about, human behavior is very complex. And a lot of these barriers intertwine and intermingle. So the combo pack is where most of us are, myself included, where we have more than one of these. For example, if you're seeking comfort food all the time, that could be food addiction, it could be emotional eating, it could be habit, or it could be denial. If you've got a negative view about healthy eating, that could be false perception or denial or pride. So we'll see a lot of these tie together. If you're complacent or you just don't want to make changes, that could be the apathy or fear of change or avoidance of pain. So the book has tips for all of these things. I'm certainly no psychiatrist or psychologist, just these are things I've observed over the years and a couple of tips on each thing that could maybe help.
Well, it's a great book and I love it. And I love your recipes and I love what you're doing. And thank you so much for doing it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, Chef AJ. I still remember that Wellness Forum conference where you and Chef Dell were given a bunch of ingredients and said, okay, make something. I think kale was involved.
Right. And I beat him. It was kale and I actually beat his butt. I like to tease him about that because he's a terrific chef. He's been on a couple of times. That's nice. Well, thank you so much. It was a wonderful presentation. I can't wait to try the recipes. They look amazing. Hope you guys will try them and like them and report back. And I hope you guys will come back tomorrow when we have a double header. At 1 p.m., we have a bonus show with Dr. Sadiq God, I'm going to mess up his name. Well, his first name is Sadiq, because I always think of the Shirzais when I say that. But he is a staff doctor at the True North Health Center, and he is amazing. I believe he was in that episode of Wellness or Unwell that's on Netflix now. Dr. Goldhammer is on a new Netflix series, episode 4. And at 11 o'clock, we have an amazing sports medicine doctor from Eisenhower. And you don't have to be an athlete to watch this presentation, because what he specializes is in treating all of our myriad orthopedic conditions without drugs or surgery. And he's amazing. His name is Dr. Rajiv Taylor. He's actually my doctor, and he has helped me immensely. So thanks, guys, for watching today. And Sid, thanks again. This was so great catching up with you. After 10 years, I'll never forget her. Sid Nodder, I never forgot her.
That makes me laugh. And I forget how you told me that was from an I Love Lucy show or something.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right. So there's I'm a big Lucy fan, and there was an episode where Ethel May Potter, and they said, Ethel May Potter, I never forgot her. And when I heard your name, I don't know why, but I've been saying that for 10 years. And see, the truth is I have never forgotten you. So the name works.
Thank you so much again.
And thank you so much. And again, if you want to check out the book, The Plan A Diet, on Amazon, if you go to her website, Sid Nodder, you can get a signed copy. Take care. Thanks, Sid.